Despite the fact that I wanted to quit that teaching job almost every day of that year, I stayed and finished the year with my students. As I gave them their end of the year assessment, I was tremendously surprised and also relieved and overjoyed to find that they had all made measurable gains in their reading levels. My current teaching position is in Richfield. I'm actually the school media specialist there. In Richfield, we have a situation that's somewhat similar to my elementary school in that we have an extremely diverse student population and a very homogeneous teacher population. I am one of the few bilingual people at my school, which constantly places me in a position of being a culture broker between my students in their home lives and the school as an institution. This year, my own professional development plan is to teach a class in Spanish, a reading class, with 2 grades worth of ELL beginners. So they're students who are new to the country within the past few years. It's tremendously hard for me. Every week that I teach the class, I find vocabulary that I should know but don't. I think it takes about twice as much effort for me to speak in Spanish as it does in English. But towards the end of the year, I'm amazed at both how much I and they have grown through the experience. We have a major initiative for racial equity in Richfield. It's district-wide, and my building is taking it especially seriously, which means that on every staff development day, we address racial equity in the curriculum and on a personal level for ourselves as educators. My pledge in our equity work at school is that I always speak during our group meetings, even when I don't want to, even when I don't feel like sharing. I try to force myself to do that. I feel like that is part of my role as a culture broker in the school as well. A benefit of being the media, actually, I think that I'm really running short on time. I'm going to skip ahead a little bit. A benefit of working with the entire student body is that I have had the chance to plan a lot of programming and take advantage of some of the larger things that have been going on in current events. This is my students doing a mock caucus in preparation for the presidential primaries last year. Another tremendously enriching experience for me as a media specialist has been the fact that I am forced to collaborate with my fellow teachers. It's part of my role as a media specialist. And I found that 2 heads are really always better than 1 when it comes to planning. Here, I'm working with a group of students creating biome websites. The 6th graders all do research on biomes. As one of the technology experts in my school, the teacher, one of the 6th grade science teachers and I partnered. She provided the subject area part of it, and I provided the technology piece. The students presented their research in the form of web pages and worked with groups to put together websites on the biomes they were assigned. I was flabbergasted by the quality of student work that came out of that assignment, and also by the almost non-existence of behavioral problems while they were working. They were so engaged in the work. I'm going to skip through some of these things. I'm just going to tell you I was going to talk about some of the books that have been the most effective in shaping me as an educator. I'm just going to give you the title recommendations and the author, and let you read them on your own if you'd like to, so we have time for questions. The first book is called Respect and Exploration. It looks at people who work in helping professions and the way that they are able to build relationships with their clientele, the kind of personal qualities that they cultivate to be effective in that. It's not teaching specific, but it is very much relevant to teaching. One of the case studies is of a teacher, the others are of nurses and other kinds of helping professionals. First Days of School, which I think is more of a manual. I read it for about 3 years straight, every day before the beginning of the school year, and I read it like a manual as I was setting up my classroom. It gives you models of how to build any kind of procedure that you could possibly dream of. The Middle of Everywhere is a book that I read when I was doing a long-term subbing assignment with a Hmong newcomers class where we had no language in common. And I thought, I know nothing about these students, and I don't even know how to ask them because we don't even speak the same language. But this book is about refugees who come from all over the place and settle in the Midwest, and how we can be culture brokers and help welcome those refugees and new immigrants into our community. It's probably a very relevant book for people teaching anywhere in the Twin Cities because we have such a large refugee and immigrant population in this area. Again, it's not specific to teachers, but it's very relevant for teachers, and a large section of the book deals with a primary and a secondary teacher. And Why Are All the Black Kids Sitting Together in the Cafeteria by Beverly Daniel Tatum. It's a book about the psychology of race development throughout all stages of life. So there are sections of that book that are also very relevant to teaching, despite the fact that it's not specific to teaching. Okay, and then I thought I was going to put together my 5 pearls of wisdom that I have gained in my fairly short teaching career so far, and then I could only come up with 4. So I thought, well, maybe 2 years from now I'll be able to add another one to the list, but 4 seemed to be the magic number. The first thing that has always been effective for me is giving my students assignments to bring home into the classroom. Interviews, pictures, and stories are all really, really easy ways to do that. My subject areas are principally language arts and social studies, so those are the areas that I've mostly done that in, but any area of the curriculum, try to weave your students' lives into their homework, and then let students publicly share their work. That way they're able to learn about each other as whole people, and that helps to build classroom community for students to venture outside their friend groups and see each other for who they really are. It also helps to erase the divide between home and school worlds, which for some of our students is considerable. Give choices. Choices are always good. Choices and assignments are good. It's great when they can choose their own topic, when they can choose their own book for reading material. It's great to include choices in projects, the formats they want to present their research findings in. Sometimes the difference between making a student write a paper and letting them do a PowerPoint can be the difference between getting something handed in and getting nothing handed in. Choices are always important in behavior. There's always a choice in behavior. Even if the choice is to leave the classroom, there's always a choice to comply or leave the classroom. Sometimes that choice, the simple choice between if you don't want to do it, you can leave the classroom, can really de-escalate the situation. And I've never found an age group of students who don't love centers, especially if they get to skip some of the centers, because then they feel like they're getting out of work. At the very least, it lets them pick the order that they want to do things in. I've also found it's very important for me to let my students know how much I respect them and to demonstrate that in ways that are really concrete. I try to have individual conversations with every student that I have at some point early in the year. It sets the tone.